Well, we are wrapping up our theme of the month called Getting Grounded, where we are reflecting on the basic ideas of the science of mind, as is tradition in most of our centers for January. And we're exploring the Science of Mind textbook along with our book study for this month, which is Ernest Holmes' book, This Thing Called You. And if you've been here, you know that we've been wrapping all of that around the idea of the four kingdoms of consciousness, or the four stages of spiritual awareness. And those are, the life happens to me. I'm a victim. Life happens to me. The second one is life happens by me. I'm the manifester. The third is life happens through me. Life happens through me. And then the fourth stage that we're going to talk about today is life happens as me. And my talk is the deeper contact with the divine. Deeper contact with the divine. And if you remember, we've said all month that we bounce around in all four of those stages throughout the day, maybe even from moment to moment, depending on what's being presented to us. We may feel like we're a victim of life, and oh my gosh, why me? What's that song? Why me, Lord? What have I ever done? And we may feel that way, but then we may feel like we're standing in our power and we're the manifestor, the controller of our destiny. And we may be in a state of surrender and in the zone and feeling that energy of something greater than ourselves expressing through us. We may be in that place. And again, it happens throughout the day. Today, we're also going to be looking at chapter 20 of The Science of Mind, which is written again by Ernest Holmes. He's the founder of Centers for Spiritual Living. And it's called What the Mystics Have Taught. What the mystics have taught. And we begin to see in this chapter a glimmer, just a glimmer of this idea of Kingdom 4 awareness, Kingdom 4 consciousness. Now, Ernest didn't call it this. These terms and so forth have come forth later on after his passing of the four stages of awareness, or the kingdoms of consciousness. But you can see where he alluded to these within the Science of Mind teaching. He teaches about these levels of consciousness. So Kingdom 4, Stage 4, is knowing that life happens as us. Life happens as us. What does that mean? What does that mean, that life happens as us? Life, or God as me. Does that mean I'm God? Is that what we're saying? It is said that God is all that we are, but we're not all that God is. Another of those mystical, paradoxical type of statements. But what is mysticism? What is mysticism, and what have these mystics taught us over centuries? They've existed in all ages today and all the way back. And much of their writing and their intuition has been recorded. Mysticism itself can be difficult to describe and explain because it's the other side of the veil, isn't it? When we talk about the veil between our physical reality and the spiritual realm, it's the mysticism sort of penetrates that veil, and it can be difficult to describe that, much like it's difficult for us in our humanness and our finiteness of our minds to describe the infinite. It's bigger than we can conceptualize. It's bigger than we have words for. It's greater than our vocabulary. And the same can be said of mysticism, that it can be a difficult concept to describe because it is that idea of bliss. It is that idea of through the veil. Ernest Holmes had an experience in the last years of his life where he made that statement on stage. He was dedicating a church in Hemet, I think. Not Hemet. Anyway, California someplace. And he was speaking, and all of a sudden he got very still, and he said, "The veil is thin. I will speak no more." And he went on to describe that later to friends, that he had seen through the veil to the infinite. And while he was thought of as a mystic and a very spiritual man, this particular experience was very profound for him. And blessedly, we have a recording of that, and we can hear those words, and we can hear what he was experiencing that evening. So it's pretty powerful. But the mystical, again, can be challenging to explain because it removes that illusion that we have of separation. The illusion we have of separation. We talk about separation, and we can intellectually understand that we're not separate, that we're all one, but to really intuitively, in a feeling nature, know that, to really truly experience that, is a difficult concept to really truly grasp and own, Last week we talked about Kingdom 3, if you remember, being those times that we feel like we're operating in the zone, maybe in art or creating something or athletics, but we're just in that zone. Something's moving through us that is so powerful that we don't know how we did it. We don't know how we lifted the car. We don't know how we gave the presentation. We don't know how we created the beautiful piece of art. Whatever it might be, we were in the zone. And that's that Kingdom 3 consciousness. But there can still be a slight separation there because we're witnessing it, aren't we? We're watching and observing. So there's still a separation that is subtle but still there in that Kingdom 3 awareness. Kingdom 4 dissolves this. Kingdom 4 dissolves the idea of separation completely, and we are it. We are it. It's a subtle but big difference when we feel that merging into universal unity and oneness with all. The first 3 kingdoms that we've talked about all month are preparing us for this. They prepare us to be, remember how we talk about our consciousness needing to be prepared to receive that which is the new idea that we're wanting to bring into our lives, much like lottery winners. They win the money, but they haven't prepared the consciousness for the reception of such a large sum of money. So many of them end up right back where they were. And we have to prepare our consciousness, grow our awareness to be receptive to that new that we are seeking to experience in our lives. So Kingdoms 1, 2, and 3 are the foundation that do prepare us for this broader bliss of Kingdom 4 awareness, Kingdom 4 consciousness. If you've heard the mystical saying of Jesus where he says, I and the Father are one, that's what he was talking about. He was in Kingdom 4. I and the Father are one. There was no separation there. And then you read the poetry of Tennyson where he says, closer is he than breathing and nearer than hands and feet. Nearer than hands and feet. These are the ideas with the as-me consciousness that we're trying to grasp this morning. As-me. Now, this concept of oneness or unity in the divine wholeness shouldn't come as a surprise to those of us that have been studying the science of mind, right? That's the foundation of our teaching. We are all one. We are all one in the infinite. We teach that. But again, it's difficult for that finite mind to accept it. So this week, as I was sitting with this, I came up with the good old question, why, right? Why? Why would we resist such a beautiful idea that we are part of our infinite source? Why would we resist that? Well, the one thing that really popped up was, do we really believe that we're worthy of that sonship or daughtership of the divine? Do we really believe that we're worthy of that? I shared a few weeks ago that when I first started in this teaching, how it was difficult for me to accept God within me. God had always been out here someplace. You know, guy in the sky, white beard, had a book, keeping numbers on me. You know, I was going to have to answer when I died. And to come into this teaching and suddenly that is not my truth. Spirit is within. And understanding that and owning that and recognizing that I was worthy of that. That was part of growing my own consciousness. Part of growing my own consciousness. In Science of Mind, Ernest Holmes tells us that a mystic is one who intuitively perceives truth and who, without conscious mental process, arrives at spiritual realization. Many of us are students. We learn, we study. We have a logical sequence, right? We put it all together. Oh, that makes sense. The mystic doesn't do that. The mystic, through intuitive perception, without that mental process, arrives at spiritual realization. All the mystics have recognized the absolute unity of God and man. And it's almost as if, well, of course. Aha. Yes. And do they go about arguing about it and trying to convince everybody that that's the truth? Not usually. There's a peace about them because they are connected now in this unity, in this full awareness of the wholeness of life. So there is no need to argue and espouse and pontificate about the oneness of life. It is just a simple I am, right? To be a mystic is to differentiate between a belief in God and an experience of God. Think about that. A belief in God or an experience of God. Most of us, I would say, believe in God. Yes, most of us believe in God. But what does it mean to have an experience of God? Now, we sort of set this up a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about your new relationship, dating the divine. Remember? Dating the divine. And building that relationship with spirit. Just as if it was a relationship with another human. What would you do? You spend time with them. You would share yourself and your ideas and your dreams and your fears with them. Spending time. First thing in the morning, good morning. Last thing before sleep, good night. Checking in throughout the day, right? That's what we do when we're in a relationship. So being in a relationship with the divine is this idea of the experience of God in our lives. The other piece of it is the idea of surrender. That's been in our practicing the principles for the past 2 weeks. How are you doing with surrender? And remember, it's not waving the white flag and, oh, I give up, surrender. It's the surrender of the things that do not serve us on this spiritual journey in our expansion. It's a surrender of control of the outer. I've got to do it all myself. If I want it done right, I got to do it myself. Anybody else have that thought? Yeah. And that translates into all of our lives, doesn't it? It can translate into everything as opposed to trusting spirit. We surrender unforgiveness. We surrender resistance. And we surrender unworthiness. Imagine if we could all surrender the idea of unworthiness and own the worthiness that we are as the sons and daughters of the Most High. That we are divine beings of light, whole, perfect, and complete. Imagine if we could embody that, the difference in our world, in our lives, in our families. And remember that what we said, that all spiritual awakening is a process of releasing. We sing it every week, I release and I let go. If a man would travel far along the mystic road, he must learn to desire God intensely, but in stillness, passively, and yet with all of his heart and mind and strength. As Huxley suggests, the mystical path is in stillness. I love that Bible verse, be still and know that I am God. I have it hanging on my wall. Be still and know. So stillness leads us to meditation, and meditation is one of the practices that we teach here. It's one of our spiritual practices that we teach in the deepening into spirit and the opening to the infinite mind. And we do it each Sunday before service. And I hope you do it at home. I hope you practice at home. Meditation is a practice. It's not, oh, I've got it. I meditated, I'm done, right? It's a practice that we continue practicing. And there are 3 aspects of meditation. There are many, many techniques, right? Many different ways to do it, but 3 aspects of meditation. The first is contemplation. And contemplative meditation is the practice of sitting with a reading, a poem, a thought. Maybe it's observing something in nature and just reflecting on that and contemplating it and allowing it to get past the literal surface meaning and to allow it to go deeper, allow it to open up for you. Have you ever read a book for the second time and gone, oh, I didn't get that the first time? Come away with a completely different idea, or seen a film maybe for the second or third time and go, oh, I don't remember that scene, I didn't see that. Because you know our minds wander periodically, right? And we miss things. So contemplation is a way of going deeper and peeling back those literal layers to get to the deeper layers. I remember years ago, I love going to the Phoenix Art Museum, and I went for Van Gogh. Was he here? Is he the one that did the boat picture with all the people on the boat, the party? Anyway, I think it was him, one of the masters. And they had a very large, 8 by 10 painting of that, and it was the original. And they had a bench in front of it. I remember sitting down on that bench and looking at that painting. I'd seen the picture many, many times, and I always thought it was a nice picture. But to see the original and to recognize the age of it, the craftsmanship of it, the quality of it, and begin then to get past the literal piece of it, of seeing the vision, and to look in the faces of each one of the people in the picture, and to look at every color, the brush strokes, and then begin to wonder, what were they thinking? What was he thinking as he painted that? What was happening at this and just going deeper and continuing to contemplate that. I must have sat there 15 or 20 minutes just observing that painting and going deeper with it and in the contemplation of it, in which it took on a whole different meaning. And I can still feel that experience today, and that's been years ago. So that's the idea of contemplation. Another aspect is called existential, and that's where we explore our mode of being in the world. Our mode of being. How do we be in the world? Who am I? Why am I here? Always wonderful questions to contemplate, aren't they? And to take into our minds. Who am I and why am I here? I remember as a child thinking that and wondering, why am I here? Why was I born into this family, into this place in America? A white girl instead of a black woman or a black man in Europe or Mexico, or why am I not Hispanic, or why am I not, all little kid questions that I had. Why here? Why now? Why this? And why not something else? Right? And as a little kid, we're there. We haven't had a lot of choices about why we're there in our own minds, right? Spiritually, we probably did. As an adult, we probably all know why we're sitting right here today, through the choices that we've made to get here. But as a little kid, thinking about that, not so much. So existential is that idea of who am I and why am I here? The third aspect is spiritual, and that's where we set an intention. We sit down with our meditation time and we set an intention. And our intention is to realize our oneness with life, with God, with beauty, with peace, with harmony, with love, any of those, that we just set that intention for the realization. I'm going to sit in my meditation time, and my intention is to realize the beauty of God. If God's face was hanging on my wall and I called it beauty, what would that be? If beauty was a picture hanging on the wall, what would it be? If peace was the color of a sunset, what would it be? And we can go into those spiritual realms and uniting in that unity that we read about with Jesus, we read about with Buddha, where it became, I am. I am. In each of these meditations, we seek to realize our unity with the Absolute. We seek to realize our unity with the Absolute and to recognize spiritual truth with a capital T, to really connect with that. And that's beyond the intellect, isn't it? We've talked before how science of mind can be a very intellectual study, and the key is to drop it into our hearts. To drop it into our hearts. Ernest Holmes said in The Science of Mind, stay with the one and never deviate from it. Never leave it for a moment. Stay with the one. And for me, this is the idea of pray without ceasing. It doesn't mean staying on our knees and beseeching God to please do something for us all the time. Pray without ceasing is a mental idea of staying unified with the one, that relationship we talked about. It's staying unified, staying connected to Source at all times so that no matter what's coming at us and which one of the kingdoms we may be wanting to bounce into, we can recognize our centeredness, our wholeness, our connectivity in the one. Pray without ceasing. Stay with the one and never deviate from it. So let's look at some practicing the principles this week and see how we can use this. The first is study. The first is study. And learning about the mystics offers us pathways to discover the mystic within ourselves. When we read their material, Emma Curtis Hopkins, Meister Eckhart, Rumi, Jesus, Ernest Holmes, Joel Goldsmith, we can see the unfolding of their paths and understand their mystical writings and begin to recognize that resonance within ourselves. Begin to recognize it. So study is a path to discover the mystical life for ourselves. The second is practice. And again, we always encourage to have this daily spiritual practice where you can court the presence of God. If you're having a relationship, you're dating God, we got to do some courting, right? Got to do some courting. So that takes time. And it will increase our awareness of the infinite wisdom that is not only within us, but within all. And then as we spend that time in our meditation practice, we begin to see God and all there is around us throughout our days. And that's really the beauty of it. We talk about meditation, 5 minutes, 20 minutes, 2 hours, whatever it might be. But the beauty of meditation is not only the time that we spend in it, but it is the effects of it that continue throughout the day. It is the effects of it that continue throughout the day where we just stay more grounded. We stay more in that place of prayerful acknowledgement of life. We stay more calm. And this is not just spiritually proven. If you've read, it's also being proven in science of what the benefits of meditation are for us. So the kingdoms of consciousness are victim, manifester, channel, and I am. And in Kingdom 1, I release my thoughts of victim. We're releasing something, right? We're releasing something. Kingdom 1, I'm releasing my thoughts of a victim. In Kingdom 2, I'm releasing my need to control everything in my world. In Kingdom 3, I'm allowing Spirit to flow through my life. I'm surrendering to Spirit. And Kingdom 4, it's where I really, truly surrender and completely accept my life as the life of God. My life as the life of God. We become the truth. We are the unity. We are the one. And again, none of these is a bad place to be, right? And we all bounce around in them all the time. But as you become more clear about each one of them and what's your go-to, right? We all have a go-to probably. figuring out what that is and if that's truly what serves you, or if it's something that you want to let go of and spend more time in 3 or 4. Those are choices that we get to make, aren't they? Choices in how we want to live our lives, what the experience of our lives is that we want, and how we experience this thing called you. So I want to close this morning with a quote from the mystic Meister Eckhart, who says, "The eye through which I see God is the same eye through which God sees me. My eye and God's eye are one eye, one seeing, one knowing, one love." So it is. So would you join me now as we go within for an affirmative prayer this morning? So as we just move into the stillness of our own being, and recognize the one life, the one heart, the one love. That which we call spirit, that which we call God, the infinite, the absolute, unconditioned, infinite intelligence. No matter what we call it, we recognize that that's all that there is. There's a power in the universe. There's an energy in the universe that is God. It is this infinite intelligence, inspiration, wisdom, order, harmony, peace. And as we recognize that and connect with that, we realize that, yes, that is what I am. It is in, through, and as me, as an expression of it, individualized and unique. I am that peace. I am that wholeness. I am that unity in the one. I am that life. That life is my life. And as I know that for myself, I know that for each one of us, for we are all in this one wholeness, this one unity called God, called Source, called life. We breathe it. It beats our hearts. We are conscious of it. And so in this wholeness and in this unity, in this place of light and joy, I speak my word for and about each one of us, knowing that as we are lifted into this light of wholeness this morning, we step into our own I am, the I am of God, in me, as me, through me, as an expression, living this life through my choices, my perceptions, my ideas of my individualized and unique expression on this planet Earth. As Spirit expresses and expands through me, through each of us, and every breath that we take, every idea that we have, every creation that we create, every person that we love. We are just so blessed to be in this unity and in this wholeness together. And so I know for anyone that has anything on their heart today that they are seeking prayer around for any sort of a rearrangement of the order or a change in circumstance, that is lifted into this powerful prayer this day, and that healing is revealed, truth is expressed, ideas come forward, finances flow, prosperity is abundantly sourced and supplied, whatever the need is, I know that it is met in this moment. For we are united in the one, and where 2 or more are gathered, God is there. And so it is with a grateful heart, filled with joy, filled with thanksgiving, that I release this prayer into the activity of law, knowing that it is done and it is so. And we affirm this together this day by saying, and so it is.